Today's episode is brought to you by my book, Blueprint to Business, an entrepreneur's guide to taking action, really committing to the grind, and doing the things that most people won't. In this book, I show you what it's really like to be an entrepreneur, what it's really like to grow a business, and I show you realistic approaches on how to grow your business and how to avoid the mistakes that I've made. I can guarantee you this. If you are in business, if you're looking to go into business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a wannabe entrepreneur, this book will change your life. It's available everywhere. It's available on booksamillion.com. It's available on amazon.com. It's available on barnesandnoble.com. It's available everywhere. You can also pick it up on my website at www.michael-alden.com. Again, I guarantee you that Blueprint to Business will change your life. All right, well, my name is Michael Alden, and we are here actually off-site. This is in Blue Vase Studios. You'll probably see it's a beautiful place we're in. We're actually in the studio of world-famous artist Charles Fazzino. You've probably seen his artwork all over the world. It's owned by heads of state, it's owned by celebrities, and he's been at it for a very, very long time. I love his artwork, I'm a big fan of his, and he's allowed us to kind of sit down in his studio, talk a little bit about, what he has done, not only as an artist, but also as a brand builder, and really the things that we like to learn about, how he did it, what did he do, and also the struggle. So I'm really, really excited that he's allowed us to come here, sit down. Charles, thank you so much for being my guest.
Thanks. Nice. Thank you for being here.
Well, yeah, it's such a beautiful place, and this is the first, actually only the second time we've actually gone off-site, to interview people. So, for those of our viewers and listeners who don't necessarily know about you or your background, I guarantee they've seen your artwork. Tell us a little bit about how you became an artist, because it wasn't like an instant thing, right?
Well, it was something that I knew that I could do. At least I thought I could. I wasn't the greatest artist, but my father was a shoe designer here in New York City. And he created shoes and had a little factory here in our town, Rio Summer, which is right outside of New York. And my mother used to work there, and she was very creative. She was an immigrant from Finland, and the two of them together created this business together here in Rio Summer. And they were always drawing and doing creative things around our house. And I sort of grew up in that environment, always watching my father drawing shoes and shoe ornaments, and my mother creating crafts and other things. And that's sort of how the environment was when I went to school. I wasn't the greatest student. I was always just barely passing.
Right.
It's really pathetic, actually, but bad in math and science. But I really had this need to want to prove to my parents that I was as good an artist as they were. So that's sort of how it started. I always had this feeling that I wanted to be an artist because they were artists and they were successful. So I thought, well, if they're successful, I could be successful. And I think that's one of the problems a lot of kids run into today, and parents who are telling, kind of guiding their kids on what to do in life. And I sort of had a different view. I always said, wow, I'm going to be successful, so I'm going to be an artist. So it was a different way of thinking. And as I went into this, I always thought that I was going to be successful because they were.
Right. It's interesting. I love that background. I'm glad we talked about it a little bit as well. We actually talked earlier about this a while ago. And what I love about that is I almost kind of feel the same way. It's almost like you kind of had a little, I don't know if you want to call it a chip on your shoulder, was it? But you just you always felt like you had something to prove. And I think sometimes people think that's a negative thing, but it's really not, right?
It wasn't for me. I think that was very important to me, that I was always trying to show my parents, wow, I can do this.
Right.
I was really not a great artist, and it really took me years of practice. And that's what I always tell artists, how do you get to be a better artist? And that is just practice, practice. It's just constantly doing it. So, yeah, that was my thing. I had a small chip on my shoulder, even through art school. By the time I got to art school here in New York, where there was really talented kids, and I was like, wow, I think I had more motivation than I had talent. But I think that I was always trying to prove myself to my professors and art teachers and so forth in school, and they were very hard on me when I started. I remember them saying, this is just, it's no good. You're not, and that really propelled me to this inertia to just keep going and going and proving myself. And that has a lot to do with it. And I think in any career that you take on in life, a lot of it has to do with your motivation.
Right.
And if you don't have that motivation and that drive, that's going to be maybe 50 or 60% of your success.
Sure. Is
that motivation. So I think you had that, I have that. We
right.
both have that, that need to show people. I said, we're good.
Right. Now, I think of sometimes when people are faced with that type of, adversity, or when they're told they're not good enough, or they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that, I think you go one of two ways, right? And I don't know what the percentages are, but I think a large percentage of people go the way and they just give up. I mean, were you ever at a point in your life you're like, you know what, maybe everybody's right?
Well, in my case, because I was such a bad student, and I was just, practically just sailing through with D's, exception of art. I just felt that there was no other track for me to go.
No other option.
So this was it. I was going to make the best of it, and that's what I did.
Yeah. No, I think that's great too. And the other interesting thing I want to go back to what you said is with artists is that when you first started out, even you acknowledge, which is, I don't know, I think it's a little bit of humility there, but even you acknowledge, you say, well, I wasn't really that good when I first started. But it took time, and we think about the book, of Outliers with Malcolm Gladwell. You must be a proponent of those 10,000 hours, right? It really takes time.
It does, especially the arts. It's kind of like a sport too. You're not. Most people are not born, this great athlete. It takes hours and time and dedication, and it's the same thing in art. It's constantly drawing, and and teaching myself, and then going back and redrawing and trying it, and it takes a lot of time, and a lot of people don't want to give it that dedication.
Right.
And it takes that dedication when you want to do something like to be a famous athlete or an artist or a musician. That's the thing. You have to have that drive.
Yeah. When I think about your art, again, we're here in your studio again. We are on with Charles Fazzino. He's a world famous artist. You've seen his art everywhere. He's in galleries all over the world. Recently I was watching something, actually, I don't know, it's been for a while probably. He actually created this awesome 3D image of an American Airlines plane, which is right there in JFK, I believe it is, right?
Terminal 8.
It's beautiful work. So again, if you'd like some more information about Charles, you can just go to Fazzino.com. It's Fazzino.com. You can also just Google him. His artwork is everywhere. When I think about, the process, I read a lot of different books, and there's another book that's similar to Malcolm Gladwell's called The Talent Code, and he talks about the process and the grind. And when I think about art, and I don't want to take anything away from other artists, but your artwork is so unique because it starts first on canvas, right? And then you have literally multiple layers of things you need to do. It doesn't just end just on canvas, right? You have a lot more to do.
Definitely. I try to explain to people, especially if I'm doing radio or sometimes on TV, because you can't see the artwork in life. If you look at the artwork, the best way to describe it is it's like a pop-out children's book in layers. They're layered like a lasagna. They're all made by hand in my studios here in New York. They're all cut and glued by hand. They're painstakingly hours of work. And when I first start to do a project, first I start off with a pencil drawing. From the pencil drawing, then I go on to a finished painting.
Right.
From that finished painting on paper, then if it's going to be a limited edition silkscreen, I get the silkscreen prints ready to be printed, and it's actually done out in Los Angeles in our place there. And each piece is then hand separated. They're shipped back to my studio here in New Rochelle. They're all then cut out by hand with an X-Acto knife. So there's this whole process of sometimes a year by the time it starts from a drawing to the end. And whether I'm working on artwork for myself, or I'm working for something like, for NFL doing the next Super Bowl piece,
right,
or for Major League Baseball, it all starts the same way. It starts off with a very detailed drawing. If it's for a company, like I said, for National Football League, it goes through their approval process, and then from then it goes through the same thing by the time it gets finished. It's this layering process, almost like a lasagna, layer by layer, and that's what makes the pieces so unique. People just love them.
Well, again, someone who's, I collect art a little bit here and there, and again, I say I don't have one of his pieces yet, although I have a feeling, guys, that when I probably leave here, I might end up, pulling the trigger or something. But so when I think of, again, I'm, kind of not too big in the art world, just enough to know a little bit, the giclées, where people, I've heard of that, am I saying that right, Steve, right, giclées, or the prints. So for you, a print is really not just a print, right? It's like,
right.
So you have to do it. So if you have a limited edition of 50 or 100 or something like that, that means you have to do essentially the same thing over and over again. And I think about that, and I say to myself, they're almost all originals as far as I'm concerned, right?
In Europe and in Asia, they're actually sold in art galleries as uniques or originals because each one is sort of unique. They're all made differently, even though they're the same element, the same silkscreen.
Right.
They're cut and glued differently, glittered, painted, and decorated with Swarovski crystals differently. Each one is unique, so it's sold that way. But yes, it's a process that is, when I say a print, it is a three-dimensional print. We also make posters, not to be confused with that,
right?
Which is a giclée or a
litho or something,
offset process.
Yeah.
And this is a handmade silk screened, which is a handmade, old-fashioned way made print.
Right.
So there's a difference, and that's why the colors, when you look at my artwork, are so vibrant because they're all silk screened. So each one is, you can, with silk screen, you can get gold, silver, really bright, like foil.
Right.
So the colors, you can use day glow colors that are so vibrant, it can't be matched in something like a giclée process, which is a digital process that now a lot of artists and people are using because it's something that you can make one print of. And we do use that process,
right,
but we're mostly, 90% of our artwork is silk screen.
Yeah, and so again, when I think about the process in business and what you're doing, you're certainly an innovator. I know you and I talked earlier, there are some others that have kind of tried to do some of the stuff that you've done, but to be able to scale it, right? Because in a traditional, just one-dimensional painting, like you said, you can do a giclée or a litho, and then just boom, just print them out.
Right.
But for you had to essentially figure it out, right? To figure out the process, develop the process. I know we're going to go check out essentially, which is kind of like your factory, but that had to have taken a long time to figure that out, right?
Yes. I wanted to do something. Disney always had an old saying, get a great idea and stick with it.
Right.
And that's sort of what I did. Many years ago when I first started, I was doing the same artwork that I'm doing today, just flat, as paintings. I finished School of Visual Arts in New York, and I got out of school as an illustrator. That was my thing. And couldn't get a job as an illustrator,
right?
For book illustrations. So I started doing the outdoor art shows with my mom, who was also doing the same sort of thing, and started showing my work. I ended up in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and walked into an arts and crafts store. And this arts and crafts store was doing something called paper tolling, or decoupage, and had all these retired old people sitting down and cutting and gluing the wrapping paper in multiple layers and cutting them out and layering them with aquarium sealant. And I said, gosh, that is so unique. And they're just making these little plaques to hang on their grandchildren's wall that says Johnny's room, with Mickey Mouse and 4 layers. And I said, this layering process was so cool. This was in 1980. So I sat down with these old people, and they're all retired. Here, this young kid in his 20s is doing this class with them, and paid my $10. And I took that idea and I went home and I said, this is such a great idea. So I took some of my old paintings and my old silk screens from college, from art school, started cutting them up crudely, making them 3D with this aquarium seal and dipping them in resin, and showed them at an outdoor art show here in New York City. And this was in the fall of 1981. And the day I showed them with my artwork at this display right on the corner of 5th Avenue and 8th Street in the Village, it was a hit. People saw my paintings, loved them, but loved these little 3D things. And so, I got this great idea, and it was just so overwhelming about how many people thought they were so cool. And this was in 1981. I just said, you get that zing moment. Right. And through the years, people have copied, my style, but they're doing what I did in the very beginning, was just taking, posters and making them 3D, or, leftover things and cutting them up and making them 3D. But, what makes me so different from everybody else is this hand silkscreen process mixed with the 3D process that I do, which is now so far sophisticated than it used to be.
Well, that's again what I think about. We haven't seen your what I'm going to just call it the factory, little Andy Warhol-ish. You had to have created that process to essentially mass produce these things, right? Because this wasn't done before.
No,
right?
It wasn't. I was.
So was that hard to do? Or did that? I mean, tell me a little bit about that. You say, okay, I have this one-off. People want them,
right?
And I know I could sell 50 of them,
right?
How do I scale this? What do I do? Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Well, I first started like a lot of people are doing today, is just taking some offset prints. I took my paintings to a local printer. He made some offset prints. I cut them and glued them and made them 3D and put them in little boxes and showed them for that first few years, because I couldn't afford to do silkscreen prints.
Right.
And I did that for a few years. And then as the years went on, they were just still popular. Every weekend I'm doing these shows and doing great.
Right.
And I thought I was a success, know, and I was for those days. And that's kind of how it all started, was just doing this. They were crude. My wife was working in a theater and box office, and she was cutting out the pieces for me. And then I was gluing them on the floor, on the kitchen floor at night, and having them ready for the weekend. And we did that for a few years. And that's sort of how it started. It was very crude, but I just stuck with it. And through the years, I met somebody who helped me. We went into business to sort of produce these as a silkscreen process. And that's when it all took off. And a big show in New York showed them at, and immediately galleries started buying them. And it became, a success. But it took years. It went from, I think 1980 to about 1986 or 7 till it really clicked.
Yeah, that's great. In a second, I want to talk to you. You've mentioned the term success a little bit. I want to ask you that question. So I want to ask you what success really is. Folks, again, if you're watching or you're listening right now, we are on with Charles Fazzino. He is a world famous artist. We are right here in his studio. He was gracious enough to allow us to come in and spend a little bit of time with him to talk about the process, to talk about not only art, but what it takes, to be an entrepreneur, to grow a brand. And if you'd like some more information about Charles or his artwork, you can just go to Fazzino.com. I know for those of you that are watching, we'll just put his website right up there. You just Google him as well. He's on Instagram, he's on Twitter, he's now on Snapchat as well. I don't even know if he knows he's on Snapchat, but he is now on Snapchat as well. So again, if you'd like some more information about Charles and his work, and also just take a look at the history and all the things that he's done, and the people that have purchased his artwork, and the philanthropy and all the different things that he's done with his artwork. It's really, really beautiful stuff, but it's also truly changing the world in so many different ways. So again, if you want some more information, just go to his website. Success, right? How do you define success?
That's really hard. I mean, I guess for everybody it's different. For me, it's being able to have more free time to do what you want to do, to pick projects that you want to do, and to also to make a difference in somebody else's life, if you can, and if it works. And I think that's what defines success, is that having that extra free time to be able to do what you want to do, not only just producing artwork because you have to pay the bills.
Right. Yeah. And for you too, and again, when I think about what you do, and again, we talked earlier before the interview, is, you always hear people talk about, your passion, right? Being able to follow your passion, and say if you follow your passion, it's not really work. But for you, it's really truly not work, right?
I love going to work every day because I don't look at it as work.
Right.
My staff and I, some of them have been with me now 25 years and longer.
Right.
And a lot of the people also working in the creative field, I think for many of us, it's not a chore to go to work because we're doing something that I think all people want to do.
Sure.
Creativity sort of sets your life and gives you a different view of the world, and it makes going to work very interesting, and because it's not work.
Right.
Because creative things sort of give you a different view onto the world, and it's just different.
Right.
So I'd like it would be great if most people could find something creative in their life, whether it's to make money or just to make them feel good. Creativity really just sets you apart.
It's hard, right? A lot of people, unfortunately in life, probably don't really find that passion.
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you give to those people? I mean, you're an artist. What about artists? You hear the classic starving, struggling artists. What sort of advice would you give them if they've just been at it and year after year, and they're maybe, like you, I have friends that are selling art on the street to live, and they love it, and that's part of their lifestyle, but they want more. I mean, what sort of advice would you give, to artists? But I think in general it would apply to everybody. But
it would. Today is a different world, obviously, than when I started. We had different outlets. Art was just coming up. The whole outdoor art shows and the scene started in the late 70s when I first started doing that, but and then really got big in the very early 80s. So it's really hard to say, okay, for an artist, do this or do that. But what I can say is that it's very important to be motivated, but some people work all their life and maybe they're not doing the right things. I think I chose the right things to do. For instance, a lot of artists, I'll say to a young artist that asks me, well, how do you get your work shown and seen to people? I said, there's so many charities out there that have these big gala events. When I first started, I started with Rosie O'Donnell. We had met, and she had this foundation called For All Kids Foundation here in New York. And she asked me, first it was make a desk for her show that would be auctioned off for charity. And for most artists, they'd say, like, I'm going to give them a piece of my artwork. And it's like, and what do I get for it? I can't afford to do that, or I can't afford to give my artwork away. It was the best thing I ever did.
Right.
Second thing, she asked me to do something for a gala event. I did this huge painting with Michael Jordan and everyone who was going to be at this event. And I made this huge painting. It took me a month. I was working on and off, doing other things. Gave it to her, and that was the start of getting into that realm, because there's all these charities need art to sell it so they can make money from it, but it's a two-way street. It works so well for artists because just one event, 400 or 500 people who never knew your work before, all of a sudden know your work.
Right.
So for many artists, I say, if you can't figure out a way to do something, connect with a charity that you feel good about, something. Maybe it's cancer research, maybe whatever. They all have these gala events. Tell them, I'd love to donate a piece of artwork that would resonate with people that will be there that evening. Give the artwork away. Tell them you want, your name there, or if it's going to be a silent auction, a plaque maybe. So many people tell me the first time they saw my work was at a charity event. And I still today give away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of prints and paintings and so forth to events everywhere, because I know it's doing great for them, but it's doing great for you.
Right.
Because so many people who maybe are never going to walk into an art gallery because it's intimidating to see your artwork hang in somebody's art gallery, hundreds of people every night will see your work. And that's one important thing. I mean, there's so many things that artists can do to get the work out there.
I was going to ask you what's the best thing an artist can do to market, because I knew that story a little bit, and I think you're right. And I was talking with some people earlier today about doing that, giving away things. I'm in a lot of different businesses, and I'm in business with a friend of mine who has peanut butter, and he gives away samples of the peanut butter. And people say, well, what are you doing that for? He says, look, if I have a great product and I give that away, people are going to come back and buy it. But that painting in particular, the one that we're talking about, the one that you donated, that painting, I believe, netted $500,000, didn't it?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
I was shocked that they got that much money from my artwork, and this whole bidding thing, it was almost surreal being in the audience and watching this going on, of this big, beautiful 3D painting. And it was, to date, one of the most expensive pieces that my artwork went for. I mean, today they go for, upwards of close to that, but it was just amazing as a young artist for that to happen. So I started just from then, Rosie needed artwork, I gave it to her, this one needed artwork, and I would start going to this event and that event, this cancer charity and Alzheimer's and you name it. And it's amazing how then later on you find out how it affects you in your life as you get older.
Sure.
You know, all these different events, and it's a great thing to know people.
Right.
And it's just been a very good thing. But as I could say to artists, that this is one entryway to get in, get your work known.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, people call that, you know, cause marketing, and you and I again have talked about this story before, and it's that one person also that sees your art that you might not know. I'm sure you probably could, you know, connect the dots, so to speak, from that one particular night. Now, again, if you go to your website, again, it's Fazzino.com. You have images of, you know, heads of state that you know, own your artwork. Your artwork is in countries all over the world. You know, some of the biggest celebrities in the world, from musicians to actors to actresses, all own your artwork. And I bet you could probably connect a lot of them to that particular night, right?
I don't know, I guess indirectly, but you know, it's funny how also for artists it's important that everything is a stepping stone.
Sure.
You know, sometimes art galleries, you know, you work so hard on this piece of artwork, you put a price on it. It's also important to make it reasonable in the beginning for people to afford your artwork.
Right.
And to give them a chance to build your, you know, the momentum into getting your artwork at a certain level. Hear me, after all these years, I still have things that are, you know, a $25 poster that's available.
Right.
If somebody wants to, you know, get something of my artwork. So you have to have something for everybody, and it's important to sort of just, you know, stay with it. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I know we don't have a lot of time left because you're busy. I would definitely want to check out your factory in a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about the things that don't work.
Okay.
You know, throughout your career as an artist, have there been things that maybe you call the labor of love? I heard you say a lot. Things that you put truly your heart and soul into, and it just doesn't work. Has that happened throughout your career? And then again, how do you kind of overcome that? I know we talked about obstacles, but I think about, you know, people always see when they see your artwork and they see it in JFK and they see it in museums all over the world and they see the success, but they don't see the stuff that doesn't work. How does that happen, and what do you do to kind of overcome that?
That's part of the whole thing about being an artist. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work.
Right.
I can show you, you know,
Does it drive you nuts?
files
Does it
of
drive you
artwork
nuts?
that I thought it was going to be the greatest thing, and everyone's going to love this image, and I put it out there, and everyone's like, bah.
Does it drive
You
you
know.
nuts as an artist, or
Yeah, it does.
A little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the way it is.
Right.
But sometimes you have to do things, you know, that, you know, are not going to be saleable.
Right.
And that are just going to be something that you felt you needed to do. And
Right.
I have a lot of those mistakes.
Sure.
But I don't know if they're mistakes.
Right.
You know, in years to come, I'm sure they'll all be, you know, accepted and so
Right.
forth. But that's the key, is not to feel that way, you know, and to just overcome that, just take that hurdle. I mean, if I was to put together all my disappointments, I remember once I went to a mall show to show my artwork in the early days, and I think I made $30. I didn't even have enough money for the motel at night, you know. And if I was any other type of a person, I'd be like, why am I doing this, you know?
Right.
And you had a couple of those, and I'd have a string of those sometimes of, you know, showing up at a outdoor art show in Florida, and it's pouring rain for a whole week. And I mean, these disappointments are part of life, but if you feel that strength in you, you know, it's important to just overcome that and just keep going. That's the whole thing with, you know, finding something that you like to do and stick with it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
To me, again, I think that sums it up. I mean, it's the key to success. Folks, again, we've been so fortunate to be here with Charles Fazzino. He's a world-famous artist. We are here in his studio in New Rochelle, New York. He was gracious enough to spend a little bit of time with us to talk to us again about, you know, the real behind-the-scenes things of what's going on as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And I'm very, very fortunate. I mean, listen to all the things that he talks about. I mean, he's suffered, you know, what I like to call, I learned from Zig Ziglar, temporary defeats throughout the years. And as an artist, I asked him the question because I feel as though it's almost a little bit more intimate, you know, with you, because you really truly put your heart and soul. But we all do, okay, as entrepreneurs, as business people. You do a lot of things. Sometimes they don't work, but you got to overcome them, right? You got to work through it. You got to persevere. And just, you know, the advice that you've given is just really, really awesome. If you'd like some more information about Charles Fazzino, you can just go to his website. It's Fazzino.com, Fazzino.com. You can just Google him. He's on Snapchat. Snapchat, he's on Twitter, he's on Instagram, and his artwork is beautiful. And the other thing he had mentioned briefly, didn't really touch too much upon it, but it's affordable really to anybody. So whether you want a print, whether you want a poster, whether you want a limited edition, or whether you want an original, it's pretty much affordable from anybody from all different parts of life. And that's the thing about art that I learned, because I own, I have just prints of art that I framed and that are they're in my office, and I have originals as well. And when you look at them, they're just as beautiful to me, as it is. So don't let that, hold you back from maybe purchasing something that you might love, because it also, for me, it brings joy to my life. And just to be able to be here and walk through and just see your art and understand, it's just been truly a pleasure. So I want to thank you for spending the time here and letting us come in. Again, my name is Michael Alden. This has been another edition, or really only the second edition of the Alden Report Offsite. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're listening to it, I tell you to make sure you watch the video, because when you see Charles's artwork, it's just truly, truly amazing. And again, my name is Michael Alden. We'll see you soon. Today's episode is brought to you by my book, Blueprint to Business, an entrepreneur's guide to taking action, really committing to the grind, and doing the things that most people won't. In this book, I show you what it's really like to be an entrepreneur, what it's really like to grow a business, and I show you realistic approaches on how to grow your business and how to avoid the mistakes that I've made. I can guarantee you this. If you are in business, if you're looking to go into business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a wannabe entrepreneur, this book will change your life. It's available everywhere. It's available on booksamillion.com. It's available on amazon.com. It's available on barnesandnoble.com. It's available everywhere. You can also pick it up on my website at www.michael-alden.com. Again, I guarantee you that Blueprint to Business will change your life.